So the Vending Machine Isekai has come to a close, but with that close, Reborn as a Vending Machine actually announced that Season 2 is actually happening, which was quite the shock given that there was only 3 light novels released before it ultimately went on an indefinite hiatus because it just really didn't have the popularity at the time. Sure, there's the web novel that apparently was finished, but at the same time, even though I assume we probably would see a Season 2 eventually, I just figured what would happen would be the light novel author would then kickstart releasing those again. But you know what? Season 2 is coming, and overall, I honestly have to admit, the show that I walked into assuming it would be a meme of the season ended up being a fairly good isekai, all things considered, that I highly recommend. So Season 2, I'm quite excited for. Now, the big question I think everyone walked into this show is Reborn as a Vending Machine. Is it going to be good? And I think the biggest question people will have who didn't try this show, now that it is over with its first season, was Reborn as a Vending Machine actually good? And I honestly think yes. I don't think many people are going to claim this to be peak isekai or the greatest isekai we've ever seen, but it was the farthest thing from a trash series, but it also was fairly unique with how it handled its mechanic, which was the main character being a vending machine, and actually transforming into things that actually exist in our own world rather than just making things up. Like, the idea that you have a character who was pretty much a vending machine enthusiast, and the fact that he now gets to navigate this world in that way was, as funny as it is on surface level, there was actually that complexity that, similar to a Dr. Stone, where the author did their research, even though it's not as complex as research as Senku discovering how to make things out of nothing, there is still that research there that every time I look up, I'd say there's no way that vending machine exists. God damn it, the vending machine actually exists. And I honestly leave the show saying this was a good isekai. It was fun, it was different, it didn't revolutionize anything by any means, but it also stood out and did its own thing. And I think in a sea of mediocrity, you have to admit and just give a little round of applause for something that was bold enough to take a ridiculous premise and somehow run with it and make it fairly consistent, all things considered. Now, before we jump any further, I have to mention we do have a full live reaction, episode 12, the final episode of Reborn as a Vending Machine, over on my Patreon. If you would like to see that, it's over there if you're interested. Now, I would argue this was my personal favorite overall episode. I mean, last week, I was saying the same thing, but this was a good finish. This was a good finale. And the idea of walking into this episode knowing someone was going to die, if you watch the preview and you look at the subtle clues that were being built up, like, oh, I can't wait to do this again, they basically were putting a death flag over, at the very least, Lammus's head. And the idea that 2 characters do legitimately die, their hearts stop. That wasn't clickbait, that wasn't freak, like, oh yeah, we're gonna make them worry. No, like, if you show in the preview Boxo turning into like a defibrillator, I mean, you know someone's heart stopping. And the idea that 2 people got literally electrocuted, including Hyumi, the fact that they legitimately did die. And yes, you can say, well, they came back, so all's well that ends well. I mean, still, that was an intense situation. And I really like what they did in that moment, because if we remember, anytime Boxo transforms into something that they really have never seen before, whether that's technology, whether that's a soda in a bottle, like the idea, like, do we hit it? Do we pull it? Like, no, you have to twist it. But, that's something that they would just naturally not understand, because most likely in their world, everything's kind of like capped to like a wine bottle or something. So the idea of twisting a Coca-Cola bottle is something that they just naturally wouldn't think of doing right away. So if you give them a piece of technology that's all about basically reviving someone's heart, that's not going to go over well, especially when time is of the essence. So what does Boxo do to make this go smoothly? 1, he buys telekinesis, which honestly is a game changer not only for moments like these, but you have to consider Boxo has a very limited speaking pattern, right? Sure, they know how to listen to him and communicate, but the idea that now he can move things with his mind, in theory, he could write now, right? Like, he could take a pen or draw in the dirt and figure out how they write their own language, and in doing so could probably have proper conversations going forward. And those are the types of moments that get you excited for that season 2, which we now know is coming. But the biggest is that in a moment where it's literally life or death, time is of the essence, what does he do? He takes it out of the box and then he opens it up. The cool thing is there's actually a speaking mechanism inside that, so it kind of gives him a bit of advice as well. And the idea of basically increasing his dexterity, I think he went up by 30 points. He went from 10 to 40 to make sure there was a good shot of this working. This is a moment that I truly thought what was going to happen was Lamis was just going to be like, you know what? I'm the main character right now. I need to get this done. And she would just make no mistakes. And that's usually how an author like this would go about an isekai scene. But this one said no. Realistically, they would have no idea. They're already freaked out because their favorite people are dying before them or have already died. The idea of giving them a piece of technology when a Coca-Cola bottle was probably too much to rationalize how to figure out how to open. I like the fact that they went logically. And just even the fight scene against this really cool skeleton who is bigger than a floor boss, who dips at the end because honestly, you guys entertained him, so he'll fight you later. The idea that Boxo has a lot of like really cool mechanisms, like the fact that he turns into basically a gas tank, right? So there's like 22 monsters that they have to deal with initially, so they burn them alive. How do they do that? They fill it with bottles, and the idea that he can remove the bottles so only the gas is there. It's just really cool to see how they went about combat with a goddamn vending machine, because like I was saying at the beginning of this show, like in episode 1, like at some point he's going to be shooting Coca-Cola or something at some like skeletons. And it's going to be goofy because that's kind of the premise that you think it's going to be. It's a goofy, silly premise, but it turned out to have a lot of thought and heart put into it. And that's why the final fight here with this, you know, you knew damn well there's no way we actually defeated it once it was all said and done. But it had every type of element that it was attacking with, and then it became basically an Attack on Titan Colossal Titan. And honestly, it knew about reincarnation, and that brings up a lot of questions. Was this thing also reincarnated? Do we have an overlord situation in our hands where we got someone playing the villain? Or is this just basically a god of the world or the devil of the world? We don't know. But that's why season 2 is so, like, I'm so thankful it's happening. Like, don't get it twisted, had we not had a confirmation for season 2, I would be able to leave this show feeling very satisfied. But the fact that they did confirm it, knowing where this giant skeleton can go, what does it know, how much does it know, and what does that mean for the future of Boxo? But most importantly, feeling like we've really got to understand this cast at a deeper level than I was ever expecting. And while yes, they have fun with the flirtatiousness at the end, he basically has a harem, you know, 3 girls trying to kiss him, and basically, it's weird, man, but that's anime. That's my favorite thing about anime, is anime can be so silly and so absurd that a talking vending machine gets flirtatious kisses from a few beauties, and honestly, it's hilarious. But it also does show that, like, you know, by bringing him to the spot that she initially found him, you know, that's where her life truly started to have so much more meaning. And I love the fact that they actually were able to give those more sweet and cute moments without turning Boxo into this outright pervert character like you typically see in fantasy or isekai anime. And overall, the question, was the Vending Machine isekai good? Yes. I don't think this was a great or an amazing anime, but I also don't think that's like me throwing shade. I'm just saying it had a premise that on paper was ridiculous, and it somehow made it complex enough to make it feel worthwhile. It had humor, it had heart, it had emotional heartbreak, and it was a very, very good show that has potential to become great depending on how a season 2 does progress. But overall, I don't regret watching this. I don't think I wasted my time, and I think a lot of people would have fun with what they think is just a meme of the season. It turned out to be something that actually stomps on a lot of the generic isekai that you probably thought it was going to be, but actually became something fairly worthwhile. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you thought of this show as a whole. Are you excited? Are you going to watch season 2? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course ring that bell. And of course, as I mentioned, we do have a full live reaction to all these episodes over on my Patreon. And hey, while you're there, you also get a video shout out like Riptide, Robert Perez, Roman Ruby, Rolia, Roscoe, and Samantha are getting today. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.